Hey guys, welcome to Web Development Tutorial for Beginners video 10. Today we're going to build our first real website. You can see an image of kind of what I create in this video down at the bottom right, and it's a lot of fun that we have the formatting down of CSS Grid. We know how to put things on the page with HTML, and now we're starting to build the format and the design of our very first website. I know in the previous 9 videos we have created a website, but that was more of a cheat sheet for HTML and CSS code so that we can use it in the future. This is the first time we're designing from scratch and having something that we can refer back to and designing a more real website, and that's why I've called it our first real website. So I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, first thing we need to do when we're creating our website, we need to create a folder. And so we'll go to new, create a new folder and call it Crows Coding Course, and I'll go ahead and go in there and create a new text document. Crows Coding Course.html. I will go ahead and create a folder for CSS that has a style.css. That has a style.css. Then I'll also create an images folder. So we have everything set up. So now, go ahead and open my Crows Coding Course, select file. This one doesn't have anything in it either. You can double click here and you can double click on the style.css, and now we have our two files, our HTML and our CSS. So HTML tab, our title. You can create your own title, decide what you want it to look like, but decide what you want your website to be about. And we're going to reference the CSS/style.css. So we're going to reference the CSS folder, lowercase for me, CSS/style.css. Then we're going to go ahead and in the body have a header that will be centered. So we can center our H1 tag, that is welcome to Crows Coding Course. Okay, and then we can test that by going back into our folder, opening up the HTML, and now we have welcome to Crows Coding Course. Now we can work on our style. And so for our body, we can just have a background color, and you can decide what color background you want. I'm going to choose gray. And since it's already linked, this should be gray. Okay, and then we can start making some classes. So as of right now, then we'll do a div tag, and we're going to create a class equals, and since we're having different pages that we're going to go to, I'll just call it pages for now, but we'll add some stuff in there as we go. And so we can do dot pages, and these will be the different web pages that we are directing each other to. So right away we're going to go ahead and do what we learned in the last lesson, and if you haven't done that lesson or in the previous lessons, you might want to go back and start with those. But we were going to go ahead and do a grid, and so we'll do display grid, and then we'll have our grid column template column is going to be, so how many columns do we want? Well, let's go ahead and start off with 5 columns, and actually let's make it 6 columns. So we'll have 6 at about 15% each. And so what we can do is repeat 6 times at 15%. See what that does. Is that going to just give us only 15%? I hope not. I think it should give us a little bit more. So if we go ahead and do background color blue, and then we add pages, we have our pages in there, and so let's see what that looks like here. Okay, so we have pages and it goes all the way across, so we might need to make our width of our grid a little bit. So width, we can make it 80%. Margin auto, and that makes it a little bit smaller. Still not quite as small as I would like it to be. Let's go ahead and make our 66%. So a third of the way, 2/3, excuse me, 2/3 of the way across. Okay, yeah, that looks a little bit better. So I'm not sure I like the blue. Let's go ahead and make this black, and we're gonna have our grid template rows. Let's have them 40 pixels. By, we can just have the color of the font be white. That way pages will show up, and then we can have our text align center, and that will be the center of each column spot. And so that'll be good. So if we go ahead and so now that we have our pages, we want to separate these out to have them all be pages, but also have their own individuality as well. So we create a second div within this div, and this is going to be class equals web page, and that is just so you guys know that that is a new web page. And so we are going to make copy, paste, paste, paste to make 5 different web pages. They're going to be home, about, courses, games, contact. Okay, and now we have our home, about, courses, games, contact. I actually want to push this over 1, and so I'm going to make a blank for the first one. And then now you guys can already see that we're getting started creating a little bit better of a web page there. So if we go into our pages styling, we can change our text size. You might want to go back and have the old My First Web Page opened up so you know how you can change some of these things. See, we have font up at the top, so we can just do font size. Font size, we'll have it be 24 pixels. See what that does. Excellent. Okay. Don't necessarily like the font family. We can copy and paste that over here. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Okay, a little bit better. Let's go ahead and have our header also have a dot header so that our title can have a little bit of a more formal look to it. So we can change this to a different font family. We can have a background color. Blue. And color. Yellow. And that would need to encapsulate that with the div style. So we'd have to make that a div class of header. And maybe we don't want that extended all the way across, which I don't. So we can have the width be about 700 pixels, and I'm sure that'll just center it. No, it won't. Okay, so then we have to center it, margin, and we can just auto that margin. And there, now it's a little bit more centered. So you can see how we can keep building this and start creating this a little bit more. And then with our header, let's go ahead and make it font size. And we'll make it quite large, 70 pixels, so that you know it's the heading. Whoa, that's a little too big. Let's try 30 pixels. Okay, we can go ahead and do a little bit of research on what colors we want to do. So HTML color codes. I want a little bit softer of a color than that dark blue. So maybe we'll do a little bit more of a sky blue. A little bit harsh of a blue, so we'll use this hex copy and background color instead of blue. Try this. Okay, and then instead of yellow, change that around so we can kind of group the text here, background color there, width right there. Let's see, how does that look? Okay, so I'm actually going to go back and make my blue a little bit more prominent. So we're going to change it again. Save. Okay, then we can throw in a logo. And so maybe right before let's see where we can fit this in. So image is going to be from our images folder. We're going to need to get some picture here. And I'm going to need a copy And I need to put it in images and paste and copy and paste. And so let's see what that looks like here. Okay, do I have the image in the images folder? Yes, Crow's coding course, yes. Okay, I need to reference it. So I need to go images / now. That needs to get shrunk down. So I can give it a width and a height. Width 100 pixels. Quote width equals Control S. Much smaller. Looks a little bit better. We might need to move it and center it and have it be its own box. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to make it dot image box. So let's close this off. And our image box will be still the same background color of the header and vertical line middle, and we need to put that into a div class. So inside of this image, so make sure you get to the edge of the image before the Welcome to Crow's coding. And make sure you're got all of that squared away. So let's try to organize this a little bit better. So I'm gonna have the heading 1, have a div for the image, and then after that, our heading 1 will be Welcome to Crow's coding course. Okay, and we're gonna center the entire thing, and the entire thing is going to be of the header class, but it's also going to be of class equals what do we just make? Image box. Okay, and so that will be this image right here that will be of the image class, and then this will just be a regular h1 with a header of the header class. So let's see. We'll see how this looks. Okay, so right now this is on top. That's not where we want it. So inside of our header, we're going to make ourselves a quick little grid. Grid. Display. Grid. And we're going to have our grid template columns to be, how big is our image? Our image is 100 width. So the first one's going to be 100 pixels so that we can have that image. And the second one is going to be the width of the header that we just created. 700 pixels. Okay, and so this I'm actually going to put in its own class. Dot title. Okay, and so this title is going to have 100 pixel by 700 pixel grid. This header is going to start at grid column 2, and it's going to go to the end. And the image is going to start at grid column 1 and just stay at 1. Okay. So now we need to go in and make this all of the div class title and this and that should be separate. Okay, so now we need to make sure our title has a width and spacing that we want. So let's get that fixed. Okay. In actuality, our title should be a width of a percentage. So we're gonna have it be 70%. So right now the image box is inside the header and title div classes. I'm gonna move it up and outside of the header and just a part of the title. And so now it's not part of this header sentence, but it is part of the entire title box. And so now that I've moved it, it shows up next to it. Next thing I'm going to do is try to remove the background of this coding club image. So I'm going to go into my styling here, and I've realized that the color of the image box is there and it can get removed. So you just get rid of the background color, and then I'm going to increase the size of my image so it fits a little bit closer and it looks a little bit better. And then I've realized that my width of my columns of my title can be a little bit wider, so I'm going to move that to 90%. And I can actually shrink the size of the blue border around the Welcome to Crows coding course. So I can make that, well, I'm not going to change that. I'm going to change the 700 pixels in the second column, but I'm also going to push this to the left a certain percentage so it lines up with that black bar. So 15% is what I'm going to end on. And I'm also going to shrink that blue box to 600 and make the header 600 width. So that makes it a little bit nicer and cleaner. So you can see it's really starting to come together. So now I want my font size to be a little bit bigger here, so along those web page bars. And so I'm going to set on 30 pixels. I'm also going to create a white border around the edge. So border, white, 5 pixels, solid. That will make a little border around the outside of this, make it a little bit neater. I put in the vertical align middle here, but I don't think it's functioning right now, so I'll fix that and get back to you guys. So now I've decided to get rid of that first web page so that it moves all the tabs over one. But I want the spacing to be a little bit better, so I'm going to change the repeat 6 to repeat 5 and put it at 2% as opposed to 15%. And now it's spaced out a little bit better all the way across. Okay, so now that we have the title, logo, web page bar, let's go back in, and our pages as of now has this grid template. Now it isn't necessarily supposed to have its own template. We need to have a grid that covers the entire area that we want to use, and then we want to place those items in those spots based off the location in the grid. So we need to take and make a .grid class, and that's actually where we want to place, at least for now, our pages. And that will, first of all, mess things up because we need to have these be different. Home page, and I'm going to use camel case here. So about page courses page, games page, and contact page. Okay, and then we need to go back in and do dot home page, about courses games contact. And make sure I have all these spelled right. Homepage about courses games. Yeah. Okay, so homepage under pages needs to be at location. That would be 1-1. So I would do grid column 1-1. Grid row 1-1. So first location, first spot should be the 1. All of this should be under div class equals grid. All right. So now it's under the grid. The grid does not have a width or a margins, so that is actually where we want our width and our margins as well. Control S. Now our color of our text is just consistent in all of the pages. Our text alignment, vertical alignment, border is just for the pages. The grid is for the entire page table. Okay, so now we have home under pages that is located in the correct spot. Now we need to go and copy, paste, 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 and this will be grid column 2, 3, 4, 5. Now the home page is in the correct spot, but my others, the second number here needs to be identical to the first because that's the stopping point. So you want to stop at 3, stop at 2, stop at 4 and 5. But I've just realized that my pages needs to be outside. My grid needs to be the next level for my home page, about page, courses, games, contact page, because they're referencing the grid. So I take out my pages and now they're located in the correct spot because they're located along the grid in the right spot. But now I need to implement the pages back in on the outside. So I put pages instead of inside of grid. Eventually I realized that I need to put grid on the inside and pages on the outside. And so I'll move pages to the outside of grid. Eventually, there we go. And now it goes all the way across. They're located directly by the grid, by the numbers I've put in here. The width is off by the grid, and now I put the width and margins back into pages as I had before, and now it lines up nice and neat. Okay, so we have our grid here, and our grid is displayed in this form. Now we're going to change our rows a little bit so we can add in some more content. But we have our pages, which have all the specifics of the font style, the color, the background color, width, margins of each one of these specific pages. So home, about, courses, games, contact. So that's what we need to make sure that we're specifying these in the correct areas. And then homepage, the location is grid column 1, 1, grid row 1, 1, and then 2, 2, but still on the same top row, 3 to 3. So basically this is where it starts and this is where it finishes. It just is in the 1, 1 cell, in the 2 column cell, on row 1, in the 3 column row 1, 4 column row 1, 5 column row 1, and it just stops exactly where it's at. It only fills that cell. In the HTML, I have moved pages outside of the other homepage about, because we have to specify where on the grid homepage about courses, games, contact is. And so grid needs to be the next level. If we want to continue using this grid, we're going to have to make another grid div. So we're about to do that for our content. Class equals grid, and then div class equals content, and then we can have h3 welcome to web development tutorial. Whoops. Web dev tutorial for beginners. And we can have a paragraph and just put in a couple paragraphs here, and we can see how that plays out. Okay, so now that's pushed all the way to the left here, but it's popping up on our screen, so we just need to adjust this with some CSS. And so we have the content class created. We just need to create it down here. Now let's move our title, header, image box. Let's go ahead and move that to the top and push everything else down. That way we can just beat it. It'll be chronological and when we make it. So now we're going to go ahead and make our dot content, and we're going to hope that that can use grid column. We're actually going to start this column at 2, and it'll just go to all the way to the end, so -1. And then we'll do grid row, and it'll be 2 all the way down to -1. But in our grid, we have not, we made a grid for our title, that's right. But in our grid here, our dot grid, we have not made anything a second row. So we can try a percentage here. And give it a background so we can actually see it. So let's give content background color, and let's get a good color in here. Do that color right here. Okay. So now we have a little bit of a color. Okay. It goes a little bit off the edge here. It's not exactly what we want. Our pages has the width that we're looking for, and so we can use that again for our content. But actually I'm gonna have our width, our margin left, allow us to move about, let's say 50 pixels. Okay. And now this is 66% of the width. What if we go to 100? What's that gonna do? Okay, so we need to make that a little bit smaller. 70%. Let's do 75%. With the push, would make it pretty close, so that'll work for us. So and then we're gonna make a sidebar over here. And so our content is in there, looks good. We can edit this a little bit later, but looking pretty good. Actually, let's go ahead and make this back to 70 and increase this to about 80. Let's do 100, okay? A little bit of guess and check there. Okay, yeah, I like that, okay? So then we can have a sidebar here. But we're actually going to hold off on the sidebar for this video. In the next video, you can expect us to create that sidebar that we can click on and navigate through a certain page. You can also highlight over each one of these buttons and they will change color. And if you click on them, we'll go to a new web page and much, much more. Okay guys, that's it for Web Development Tutorial for Beginners video 10. We will continue on in the next video creating this first real website and really add on to it as we go. If you found this tutorial series helpful, I always appreciate a like and subscribe. And make sure you click the bell so you don't miss the next episode.